Hello everyone, welcome back to another top 10 Commander video. This time we're going to do the top 10 blue cards in the Commander format. That is mono blue. And again, I'm kind of just going over each color combination, and sort of doing a redux. So it's not like I haven't done these videos before, it's just every year we get new stuff. And we do have some new blue cards to add to the list. So number 10, starting it off here with a newer one, we have Thassa's Oracle. Arguably a better Laboratory Maniac. It's situationally better. I think its ETB can be used even if you don't have a way to win the game. If you haven't decked yourself out at that point, it's still going to be at least somewhat useful. Blue doesn't win by damage, they don't win by combat, at least most of the time. So blue does have a dependency on alternative win cons. So if you do like Laboratory Maniac, if you do like that Jace with the same condition, pretty much what I would consider a better alternative. And then number 9 is another newer card, Sublime Epiphany. Just a fantastic card, and usually what you see with modes is that you can't choose all of them, or that you're only allowed to choose 1 or 2. This card pretty much allows you to choose all 5 of its modes. It is a 6 mana instant, but the modes are pretty good. You get to counter a target spell, you get to counter target activated or triggered ability, you get to return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, you get to create a token that's a copy of a target creature you control, and you can have target player draw a card. So all of those things are just fantastic, and we have a lot of ways to copy instants and sorceries. So if you copy this, you can get all those modes again, or however many of them that you want. This is pretty much a Swiss Army knife in the form of a blue instant. Counter spells are always going to be good in the format, and I didn't just want to have this list filled with good counter spells. I wanted versatile instants, versatile responses. I think you're better off if you tend to play more of those. And then number 8 is Narset of Vales. What I think is probably the best mono blue planeswalker, and it's not even because it puts in a ton of work. She just sits there for whenever you do some kind of windfall or Wheel of Fortune. It's pretty much the main reason why Leovold was banned as a commander. If you're able to lock your opponents out of the game, and especially if you can do that in blue, you're likely going to stop whatever else they can do. Her minus is okay. I mean, it's never bad just to search and get something quick off the top of your deck. But that static ability, that's really where it's at, and this is one of the few cards that actually does that. So definitely a big deal. Whenever you see her out there, try to get rid of her, because you know that if you don't, you might regret it later on. And then number 7 is Ponder, although I could also throw it to Preordain or Brainstorm. It's very situational, especially now that we have some kind of synergy with Scrying. Preordain could be better, Brainstorm could be better if you need some kind of instant. But this is what blue does really well, it's card draw. For a lot of people, looking at the top 3 cards and then getting one of those cards to your hand is still pretty good, and that's what all these cards offer you, the ability, if you need to go 3 deep for only just 1 blue mana. Number 6 is Windfall. I just talked about this with Narset, but Windfall is a fantastic card. For the mana that you spend, only 3, everyone discards their hands in typical Wheel of Fortune fashion, but this time, instead of just drawing 7, you draw equal to the greatest number of cards in someone's hand. So if someone has 10 cards in their hand when you play Windfall, everyone's just going to be drawing 10 cards after they discard. So something like this is even more powerful. When you have anything else like a Smothering Tithe, there's another card, you know it's coming. It also works really well with that card as well. A ton of strategies that benefit from drawing a bunch of cards. That seems to be just a pretty consistent thing you'll see in Commander. And number 5, we have Mystical Tutor. Now every color has their own 1 mana tutor. Some are better than others. I think Mystical Tutor is one of the best, because at the very least you can just tutor up a tutor that will get you what you need anyway. Again, black is the color for tutoring. It has the best ones. It's not even close. You don't have to reveal. Mystical Tutor is still going to set you up perfectly. Instants and sorceries can be pretty powerful. You have anything from removal to windfall cards. I mean, it's still very good. And then number 4, we have Fierce Guardianship. Now, I could just have a bunch of counter spells on this list, and maybe I should have, considering that's what makes a lot of blue decks really powerful, is the responses. But Fierce Guardianship is commander specific. So it's a free cost negate if you have your commander out there, which to me is better than the downside of Pact of Negation and the downside of Force of Will, and even the downside of Force of Negation. I don't want to have to exile another card from my hand, and I don't want to have to pay mana during my next turn. So while it may not be able to counter as many spells as other really good counter spells, I just think that most of the time when you do play this, it's going to be exactly when you need to stop your opponents from stopping your combos. And we see this with the other cards from Commander 2020. They're just ridiculous. Not having to pay any mana if you have your commander. It's really safe too for Eternal formats. It's why you can create something like this, and it's not just going to break Legacy. So that's really cool. And then number 3, we have Aristic Study. Now everybody's played around Aristic Study. You know exactly what you have to do. Whenever you play a spell, are you going to pay that extra mana? Are you going to pay that extra mana? Are you going to pay that extra mana? But that's essentially the game. It's really up to you to keep up with what your opponents are doing. Every time they play a spell, make sure that you remind them so that you can either draw a card or at least make it so they have to tap a land. It just seems like if you're short on card draw for a lot of decks, just simply having Aristic Study in your deck makes up for a lot of deficiencies. It's super annoying. I guess one thing they could have done to make it better was have it so that you don't have to constantly ask your opponents whether or not they want to pay that mana. I think if there was some way to get around that, Aristic Study wouldn't be quite as annoying. And then number 2, we have Cyclonic Rift. Now, I do remember my previous videos, whenever I would talk about blue, Cyclonic Rift was pretty much at the top. It's the only blue removal spell that I think is worth anything because it deals with all of your opponent's non-land permanents if you overload it. Blue's removal is usually in the form of bounce, so it's not very good compared to other colors. However, if you can kind of just wipe the board that way, it's 1,000 times better. Cyclonic Rift is a fantastic card because not only does it do that for blue, but it also does that in a one-sided way. So you can then attack with all your creatures after playing a Cyclonic Rift. You can combo off after you play a Cyclonic Rift. It's just super effective, and I think for a long time it's just been an auto-include for decks. When I was talking about Teferi's Protection in white, this is kind of like the Teferi's Protection in blue. Obviously not going to do the same thing, but it's one of those crazy powerful cards that doesn't synergize with anything, but it's just that powerful where you're going to throw it into whatever deck regardless of the strategy. It's almost at the point where I just don't feel like playing it in decks anymore because it is that powerful and it just kind of ends the game. Alright, so before I get to number 1, we have to talk about some honorable mentions here. Obviously, Pact of Negation and Force of Will are powerful counterspells. I do think they have been dethroned a bit. They don't see that much play in casual commander decks, and that's just what I tend to enjoy the most. I think a lot of people enjoy casual, but if you do want to go and play more competitively, then yes, absolutely. They're pretty much auto-includes. And then number 1, believe it or not, there is a more powerful mono blue card, and it's brand new. It's Hullbreacher. Hullbreacher is basically what you get when you take the best parts of Narset of Vales and Smothering Tithe. Not only are your opponents not going to be able to draw those extra cards, but whenever they would, you get treasure tokens for each card they would draw. So I mentioned how powerful it can be to lock down your opponents with Narset. With Hullbreacher, not only do you lock them down, but you just gifted yourself a ton of treasure tokens. This is incredibly competitive in the same way that you would want to have Cyclonic Rift in a deck, regardless if it fit the strategy. Hullbreacher is good as an auto-include in just about every blue deck for the sake of responding to someone else's Windfall or Wheel of Fortune. If that's all it's in your deck for, then I think that's still pretty good. It could be situational and it's still going to be one of the better cards in your deck, because if it's left alone, you've pretty much won the game. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. This was the top 10 best mono blue cards in the Commander format. And I apologize for not doing something like this sooner where I have a list of all the cards. I'm going to try to do that from now on. So you'll see pretty much 1 through 10 there. So anyway, guys, have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next time.